I kind of want to get to the messy part of like why we even bothered to do that Kidology video in the first place. It's something that I've been kind of ruminating on coming into 2023. I said before that I have two goals to 2023, which is on one end, be more scarce and less involved in nonsense. I am about a week into diet Twitter usage. I did not delete my Twitter, although waking up to see Foreign's feet yesterday was a good reason to. So I'm weaning myself off of Twitter and like wasting time with certain discourses and certain figures that their role in this YouTube ecosystem is to kind of like create drama and then talk about the drama and then create more drama, all in the name of leftist movements. It's like, here's how it works. All right. So I'm making this video, right? Here's my video on the B-Sides channel. And then insert streamer here will react uncharitably to the video with the hope that I will tweet or say something about the uncharitable reaction. And then in an ideal world, I would come on their stream to talk about how they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And then we can get into an argument. And then, you know, I can become a character in their like rogues gallery. And then they can make more content about that interaction. And you kind of rinse and repeat. It's something that has happened so many times. I don't understand why, and I'm speaking for myself, I don't understand why we haven't broken that cycle. So there's that, right, that I'm trying to avoid. But on the flip side, when I saw Kidology's video, the thing that made me want to talk about it publicly and not just amongst peers was we are, while this idea that the left is losing, I don't know if there's any evidence to support that. Even if you draw the line, especially what most people draw the line of the left being like liberals in the Democratic Party in America, and you know from just data that millennials, unlike their parents, and Gen Xers to a lesser extent, but still Gen Xers, unlike their parents, are much less likely, are not moving rightward as much as other generations have as I've gotten older. Like that is at least here in the States, a known reality. That is why, Republican entities in America are trying to utilize the education system and targeting Gen Alpha for indoctrination into, conservative ideologies, because they recognize they've never really had good policies or good arguments. And now they've lost the one thing they had that was working for them, which was functional capitalist structures. So as we get into late capitalism, it is a fact that more people are maintaining and moving further left. But when you have a conversation about it, or when you hear normal people, I'm not going to use normies because people thought that was condescending. When run-of-the-mill, not all that politically engaged people think of the left and think of leftist movements, they really don't have a good idea of what we're talking about and can make videos like Kidology's. And we're not here to like drag Kidology specifically because her video was kind of typical of centrist or moderate perspectives that not just mischaracterize what the left is, but also clearly don't have a good understanding of what the arguments to be made could even be, if that makes sense. Or what even is some of the misconceptions that you've been seeing that you feel like need to be addressed. Or if that's like a useful project to take on in the first place.
I think the main thing that we kind of should be doing differently, because it's something I've gotten a lot of positive response for, is moving beyond this. I suppose I don't mean to call out my contemporaries, my fellow colleagues or whatever in this space, but I think it's necessary. I mean, all these years post Gamergate, all these years post 2016 and all the things that resulted from that, there's a necessity to move beyond this allowance for the right to. So
you were saying we have to move beyond allowing the right to establish the parameters of the conversation, which is a really
Yes,
good
and
starting
I'm speaking
point.
specifically about the online left here. I mean, offline, it's very obvious that we need to take certain steps to organize. So we need to organize acts of non-cooperation. There's things like strikes and boycotts and those sorts of organizations. And strikes are not just workers' strikes. Strikes can student strikes, tenant strikes, worker strikes, consumer boycotts, all of those things. Of course, consumer boycotts are slightly less effective than they used to be, considering the multinational nature of capital. But that is one way we can do that in terms of non-cooperation. In terms of confrontation, there are various acts of obstruction, of protest, of direct action, of occupation, and I get into that in my video on social revolution. And then there's also acts of prefiguration, which is establishing institutions, systems, relationships, and stuff in the here and now that reflect the sort of future society we want to live in. So that would be things like establishing cooperatives, establishing commons, establishing library economies, which is another topic I talk about on my channel, and basically sowing the seeds for the new in the shell of the old. But that is offline action. If we're speaking specifically about the online left, I think one of the main things has to be moving away from letting the right dominate the conversation, moving away from this idea that, oh, well, the right wants to talk about critical race theory. And yes, I know they have like a ton of funding and stuff. But I think and we do need to react and respond to what they are doing, because they have that platform. At the same time, we also need to be willing to push the parameters of the conversation, to put them on the back pedal. Because if it's one thing you've noticed, and this is not unique to the States, I'm very familiar with America's politics because it has global consequences. But this is not unique to the States, right? Around the world, right-wing parties, right-wing organizations, right-wing politics are very much status quo oriented. They do not tend to have much in the way of political programs that advance the quality of life for everyday people.
Pretty much none.
Yeah. So the focus has to be on establishing that, and establishing this is what we need to do to make people's lives better. This is how people's lives are being made worse by these systems. And in the offline space, like I was saying, non-cooperation, prefiguration, confrontation, all those things in tandem to push things forward. And of course, all of that must involve education. And that is where the online has the most potential, because we spend a lot of our lives online. But then also, because of the nature of online and online spaces, it can be very difficult to engage with people, to be able to tell if someone is engaging in good faith, who is trolling, who is genuinely ignorant, and who is just like a bad actor. Which is why it's also important. You want to conserve your energy. You don't want to get burnt out too soon, but also, you don't want to be that person who's always like, it's not my job to educate you kind of thing. I think it's striking a balance, and also being aware of the fact that if you generally don't have that capacity to educate, you could probably step back and direct them to some resources or something of that nature. But I think education really happens best on a person-to-person basis, on a face-to-face basis, because I mean, we're humans, our brains, like half our brains are basically dedicated to reading people's faces. So it's and tone and that kind of thing. And so I think it's important, and also that,
which means we're going to see your face soon, then, right? Face reveal, the Drew face reveal coming soon.
I like to live my life private.
I'm gonna tell y'all right now, if Drew is shut down, any and all hottest dude on the left, online left arguments, if he was doing face reveal. Please. I think is so. It's a lot of things I want to piggyback off what you were talking about just now. Like, I think about, and I promise you, this is not like meant to further engage with Kadali's video. But the thing that I was mad at us about when we talked about it was when she presented trans issues as a micro issue that we were too focused on. We missed the fact that we are actually, as you said, reacting to the right wings.
Oh, that is.
When we talk about people think that the left cares too much about trans issues, and it's because we are responding to an explicit attack on trans people by the right. Like we have not, we were not all that interested in. I am making a concerted effort, especially as I pop up in these not so hospitable spaces, that I'm not coming here to talk to you about trans issues, because trans issues are used as dog whistles by the right to galvanize normal attitudes and opinions that tend to be very transphobic. And so like in America, there were some like 200 bills introduced in the last couple of years that were anti-trans bills. So it's very clear, if you actually analyze what's going on, that it's not us obsessed with this issue, it's us defending a group of people that are being obsessed over by the right, who dictate what stories and narratives and issues can be presented in the mainstream. And when I think about, especially the online left and content creation, one thing I'm really proud of, like specifically, I think the Black Panther video was like my best performance in doing this. Because sometimes, first off, we're all trying to eat, right? Like, this is my job, this is how I feed my children. I don't know who all else has children in the online left or as content creators, whatever, but they at least got to feed themselves. So people are trying to make content that will get watched, right? So that's number one. You have to kind of understand we're doing all of this through these venues of, consumption and capitalist organizations. But you can make your dunk video or media analysis video be laced with lots of education. It can be laced with lots of information that continues to, further move people's, further increase people's knowledge of certain situations. You can do a video on, you can do your Jordan Peterson video. You can do your anti-Ben Shapiro video. And whatever the topic is, like Ben Shapiro said a whole bunch of fuck shit about MLK this past week. So like, here's your chance to talk about how MLK was moving radically later in his life, not later in his life, a few years before he died, and that all the stuff we know about MLK is like pre-1965. And for that 3-year period after 1965, you start listening to MLK, he starts sounding a little bit like, his later contemporaries. I just found out a story, again, from Black Power Media, about how Malcolm X and Bumpy Johnson helped host Fidel Castro at a UN meeting, because they were the Fidel, the Cuban government emissaries or whatever felt that they were in danger and felt unsafe. And so Bumpy Johnson, who was a street legend, like if you've ever seen American Gangster, or like several hood movies, gangster movies, black gangster movies, will talk to you about Bumpy Johnson, who was a black gangster legend, like involved in some pretty radical resistance action on the low. So I'm gonna figure out an excuse to talk about that. I don't know what it is yet, right? I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to find a way to talk about that story while also talking about, I don't know, Jordans or some shit, it's anime or some shit. Y'all can do it. We're the creative ones. That's the dope thing. We are living in this ecosystem that is controlled by these right-wing narratives, and we are being controlled by a robot that does not have our best interest in mind and that wants us to continue to react. But as long as you put the right thing on the thumbnail and sprinkle in a little bit of your stuff, sprinkle in some Elon Musk, sprinkle in some Fresh and Fit, and then but the meat can still be some really radical politics, some really good education for the people, and I know y'all can do it because y'all been, that's why I'm here in the first place, is that people were doing it. You know what I'm saying?